When I moved from Canada to Germany to do my master's, I thought I had done all my research. Turns out I didn't know everything. In this video, I'm going to be sharing 7 tips I haven't heard anybody else talking about that are going to save you stress and money when you move to Germany. Make sure to stick around to the end because number 7 is a mistake a lot of newcomers make that can end up costing you thousands of euros. Tip number 1 is how to find student housing, probably one of the scariest questions when moving to a new country. Unlike in some other countries, student residence in Germany is actually never guaranteed and can really be so hard to get into. Even if you're going into first year or if you're an international student, they put you on a long waitlist that can take years. And it's very likely that you won't get a room offer before the start of your first semester. So what are the solutions then? I have 3 tips that could be helpful. My first advice is once you get to Germany, show up to the student association's office, ask to speak to them in person, and beg for a room. This actually worked for me. I suggest you go to them, you explain your situation. I explained how I had been having no luck finding a place, that I was staying in an Airbnb, and they bumped me up on the waitlist and gave me an offer to a student dorm room. Unfortunately, the room they offered me was over an hour from campus, and I didn't end up taking it because I found something else around the same time. But if I was in a real emergency, it would have been great to have. My second advice is a website called WG Gesucht, and this is your one-stop shop for all things apartment hunting. I went to a couple WG castings, which is basically when an apartment is looking for a new roommate to fill in somebody who's leaving. And unfortunately, I had no success doing this because there's just so many people applying to these rooms that I ended up not being picked. However, this has worked for other international English-speaking students I know. And it was actually on WG Gesucht that I ended up landing my off-campus dorm room, which is my third advice. So there are student dorms that are hosted by this student association, and there's also off-campus private dorm rooms, which can still be pretty affordable. I'd recommend researching these and getting on as many waitlists as you can and making as many applications as you can. Tip number 2 is know the broadcasting fee. So you might have already heard of the broadcasting fee if you've done your research, but basically in Germany, every household is required to pay a fee for radio services every month, regardless if you have a TV or radio in your home. And the fee is 18 euros and 36 cents. What you might not have realized is the fee applies exactly the same to every household, even tiny single room student dormitories like mine. So since I have no roommates, that means I have to pay the 18 euros by myself every single month, which really adds up. So my advice for you is to consider this when looking for an apartment so you know the full rent that you'll be paying each month. My third tip is how to find an English-speaking family doctor. So you might have already heard that in Germany, all residents are required to have German health insurance, which is pretty expensive. It's around 140 euros every month. And there are a lot of insurance companies to choose from, and they all offer pretty much the same thing at pretty much exactly the same price. I personally went with TK because they offer good English-speaking support on the website and on the phone, but you can really go with any of them. Once you're all registered with your health insurance, I would not postpone finding a family doctor, especially if the German health system is different from the country you're coming from. Let's say you get really sick while you're there, you want to have a plan in place so you know exactly where to go and which doctor will speak English. So if you're using TK like I am, it's really easy to find online. They actually have a Find a Doctor website. You just go online, you put in which type of doctor you're looking for, your geographic location, and your language, and it'll give you a list of doctors near you with their opening hours and their phone numbers, and even some of them have reviews. My next tip is how to transfer currency into euros in your new German bank account. So this is assuming you were finally able to set up your German bank account, which is very complicated and I can make a whole other video about it. But how do you move your money into your account? There are a lot of options to do this, and when I was moving, I was researching them and wasn't finding many good reviews, so I was a little worried about transferring thousands of dollars into my new bank account. So I just wanted to share the platform I use and that has worked for me personally when transferring Canadian dollars into euros. This is not sponsored, but I use the app Wise. It is really easy. You can just do it all in the app. And what I like is that the fees are a lot lower than if I were to do an international wire transfer directly through my bank. So I would recommend looking into one of these currency exchange apps. Number 5 is how to travel cheap in Germany. So you're moving to Germany, you're gonna want to travel and explore while you're there. So as a university student, you will get a student transport card that usually only works on the local transportation of the city your university is in. So the city bus, the tram, the metro, etc. If you want to travel between cities, you'll probably have to use the Deutsche Bahn, which is the German rail network. And what's important to know is there are 2 main Deutsche Bahn train types. There are the regional trains, which are the RERB trains, and the high-speed trains, which are the ICE and IC trains. If you're not going too far, I definitely recommend sticking to regional trains and following my next tip, which is to get the Deutschland ticket at the student rate. So as a student, you can get the Deutschland Ticket Studium, which is only 25 euros per month and covers all regional trains and local transport all over the country. So for example, let's say you're going to Munich for the weekend. The 25 euro Deutschland ticket will cover your regional train to the city and back home from the city. And while you're there, it'll cover the metro, the tram, the bus, whatever you're taking for local transport. So in my opinion, it's well worth the cost if you'll be traveling at all during the month you buy the ticket. The next one is something I never even heard about until after I moved to Germany, and that is personal liability insurance. What a lot of foreigners don't know is that in Germany, you would be financially liable in any situation where you unintentionally cause harm or damage to another person or their property. So let's say, for example, you're riding your bike and you accidentally hit somebody's car, you would be responsible to pay for all the damages caused to the car. So personal liability insurance isn't required to live in Germany, but a lot of people strongly recommend it. So the good news is that personal liability insurance is fairly cheap. You can get a good plan under 10 euros per month. So I highly suggest looking into it online and deciding if it's right for you. I'll leave a website I refer to in the description so you can check it out and learn more. Okay, so my final tip is a little different, but I would say it's one of the biggest shocks that I encountered when I came to Germany because I had never heard of it before. And that is how dangerous it is to illegally stream or download movies and TV shows in Germany. So if you're somebody who pirates movies, I'm not here to judge you. I just want to make you aware of the consequences. So of course, pirating movies is illegal all over the world, but in Germany, the difference is that law firms can legally obtain your IP address if you torrented copyrighted material, find out your name and address, and send you a letter in the mail. And they might demand you pay a fine, which can range anywhere between 150 euros to 1500 euros per file. So let's say hypothetically you illegally stream all 6 episodes of Heated Rivalry. You might be asked to pay 1,000 euros per episode streamed. There are many stories online of this kind of thing happening to people, including people who just stayed at an Airbnb for a couple nights while in Germany and pirated a movie while they were there. So I don't want to freak you out if you've already pirated something in Germany, because a lot of the time people don't get fined, especially if they weren't actually torrenting or if they're using a VPN, or sometimes they just get lucky. But it's definitely something to be very mindful of when you are living in Germany. So that is all the tips for this video. If you learned something new, make sure to give it a like, and I will be making more videos about moving to Germany in the future, so make sure to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.